Let me describe the dumbest genius move in modern marketing history. Take the world's most dominant razor brand, a company that spent 118 years building trust with men. A company whose product literally touched their faces every single morning. A brand so untouchable that Procter Gamble paid $57 billion, with a B, just to own it. Now imagine that brand sitting in a conference room one day and saying, "You know what? Let's make an ad telling our customers they're the problem. Not subtly, not gently, full throttle. Let's show men bullying children, harassing women, talking over female colleagues in boardrooms. Let's really lean in. And then, stay with me here. Let's ask those same men to buy our razors." Somebody in that room said yes. The ad went live. And within 48 hours, Gillette had accumulated 400,000 dislikes, a globally trending boycott hashtag, and videos of their own customers throwing their products in the trash, which ironically was more earned media than the ad itself. 6 months later, an $8 billion write-down. The largest single brand loss in P&G history. The division leader's response when asked about it? A price worth paying. Sir, $8 billion. That is not a philosophical shrug. That is the GDP of a small nation. But here we are. This is the story of how Gillette went from world domination to world-class cautionary tale in exactly 1 minute and 48 seconds. To understand the scale of this disaster, you need to understand the scale of what existed before it. In 1901, a man named King Camp Gillette, and yes, that was his actual name, he was born to win, invented the safety razor. Before this, men used straight razors, blades that required sharpening, skill, and a very steady hand if you wanted to keep your jugular. Gillette looked at that situation and saw a business opportunity. His idea was elegant and slightly evil. Sell the handle cheap, make all the money on disposable blades. Every time a man threw away a dull cartridge and snapped in a new one, Gillette got paid again. It was a subscription model before subscriptions existed. It was the original trap. And men walked directly into it for a century, happily. During World War I, the US military handed every soldier a Gillette razor, free of charge. When those men came home, they brought the habit with them. Gillette had just acquired millions of loyal customers using the United States Army as a distribution channel. That's not marketing. That's just winning. For the next century, Gillette didn't just sell razors. It sold an identity. Their ads were a masterclass in masculine aspiration. Athletes, champions, rugged men living their best lives. And in 1989, they dropped a tagline that would define men's consumer marketing for a generation. The best a man can get. It worked. By the early 2000s, Gillette controlled 70% of the global razor market, 70. They priced their cartridges 35% above competitors. Men paid it without blinking. When you own 70% of anything, you don't discount. You simply exist, and the money arrives. Procter & Gamble paid $57 billion in 2005 for the privilege of owning this machine. It was the largest acquisition in their history. Gillette wasn't just a brand. It was the brand. The kind of company studied in business schools for what it did right. Until it wasn't. By 2018, the empire had a problem. Quiet, expensive, getting louder. Market share, down from 70% to 54%. Revenue in grooming, down 26% over 3 years. The brand that had defined masculinity for a century was hemorrhaging customers. And here's the uncomfortable part. It wasn't entirely the brand's fault. Beards happened. Genuinely. The beard revival of the 2000s was a cultural shift Gillette simply could not razor its way out of. Men's average shaving frequency dropped from 3.7 times a week to 3.2. Younger men grew facial hair, watched YouTube tutorials, bought artisanal beard oils that cost more per ounce than champagne. The razor business had a demand problem. And demand problems are the worst kind because there's no ad campaign in the world that makes a man want to shave when he doesn't want to shave. But the bigger threat came from a different direction entirely. In 2012, a startup called Dollar Shave Club posted a YouTube video where their founder looked directly into the camera and asked a devastatingly simple question. Why are you paying $25 for Gillette cartridges when $3 blades work just fine? Within 48 hours, they had 12,000 orders that crashed their website. This was the moment Gillette should have taken very seriously. Instead, they watched it happen and went back to charging $25 for razor cartridges. Harry's launched in 2013 with the same playbook: cheaper, cleaner, delivered to your door. No pharmacy trips, no unlocking razors from behind security cases like they were contraband. These brands felt like they'd been designed by someone who actually used razors, rather than someone who had never left a mahogany boardroom. Gillette's response was to drop prices by 12% in 2017. Sales kept falling. All they accomplished was making less money on products fewer people wanted. The discount didn't solve the problem. It just cost more to have the problem. Leadership knew they were bleeding. Their own internal language confirmed it, losing share, awareness, and penetration with younger consumers. The question was what to do about it. And this is where things get genuinely interesting. And by interesting, I mean catastrophically misjudged. In 2018, taking a public moral stand had become a marketing strategy. This was not a fringe idea. Global brands were doing it and getting praised for it. Nike made Colin Kaepernick, the NFL quarterback who knelt during the national anthem, the face of their campaign. Half the country was furious. Some people burned their Nike shoes on social media, which, to be clear, they had already paid for. Nike's sales went up, their stock recovered, the bet paid off. Nielsen research said 66% of consumers would pay more for products from socially responsible companies. Marketing agencies were walking into boardrooms across America delivering the same message. Your brand needs to stand for something beyond the product itself. Gillette's leadership saw an opening. The Me Too movement was reshaping global conversations about male behavior and accountability. And Gillette, a men's brand that had spent 30 years defining masculinity in advertising, was theoretically positioned to say something meaningful about that shift. So they flipped the tagline. The best a man can get became the best men can be. One word changed. The entire premise inverted. They hired Kim Gehrig, the director behind Sport England's This Girl Can, a campaign built specifically to empower women in sport, to deliver a message to men about masculinity. They committed $3 million to nonprofits. They were going to lead a cultural moment. On paper, it was coherent. Target younger, progressive consumers. Build loyalty that runs deeper than price. Trade short-term noise for long-term positioning. The plan was locked. January 2019. Time to make history. They made history. The ad opened with men staring into mirrors while news reports played in the background. References to bullying, Me Too, toxic masculinity. Then the scenes. Boys fighting while fathers muttered, "Boys will be boys." Men catcalling women on streets. Male executives talking over female colleagues. Actor Terry Crews speaking about accountability from his congressional testimony. Then, at the very end, a handful of positive examples. A father stopping his son from bullying. A man stepping in to prevent street harassment. Young boys learning respect. The film was 1 minute and 48 seconds. Not a single razor appeared in it. Let that sit. A razor company made an advertisement with 0 razors. They spent the budget on a moral argument instead. The YouTube comment section detonated immediately. Men who had used Gillette their entire adult lives said they felt accused, lectured, called bullies and harassers by a brand whose products had been sitting on their bathroom shelf for decades. And here is where Gillette made a fundamental miscalculation about the emotional math of marketing. The ad spent roughly 80% of its runtime showing men behaving badly. Positive examples arrived at the end, brief and outnumbered. For many male viewers, the experience wasn't inspiration. It was indictment. You are the problem. Now please purchase our product. Making it worse, this indictment was coming from a brand that had spent 3 decades sponsoring boxing and football. A brand that had built its entire identity on aggressive masculine imagery. That same brand now wanted to lecture its customers about toxic masculinity. The hypocrisy wasn't invisible. It was the first thing everyone noticed. Piers Morgan, British journalist, professional contrarian, owner of 6 million Twitter followers, posted that he'd used Gillette his entire adult life, but this absurd virtue signaling might drive him away. His response became a rallying cry. Conservative media amplified it. YouTube channels made response videos racking up millions of views. Boycott Gillette trended globally. Men filmed themselves throwing razors in the trash. Some videos hit hundreds of thousands of views. Free content, generated by customers, all of it negative. The ad hit 400,000 dislikes against 200,000 likes. Gillette disabled the comments, then quietly removed the video from their channel entirely. The company that wanted to lead a global conversation about accountability decided it couldn't handle the accountability of its own comment section, which, You really cannot make this up. Here is where we separate internet noise from actual damage. Because sometimes a brand survives a viral controversy. Sometimes the outrage is louder online than it is in the razor aisle. This was not one of those times. Grooming segment net sales fell from $6.5 billion to $6.2 billion in a single year, a $352 million decline. Gillette's global market share dropped from nearly 65% to just over 60%. Dollar Shave Club gained customers. Harry's gained customers. Even Schick, a brand that had been struggling for years, suddenly found men switching to it. Schick. Men chose Schick over being lectured. That is a sentence that should have been framed and hung in every marketing department in America. 6 months after the ad, P&G announced an $8 billion write-down. The official statement blamed currency fluctuations and structural market changes. The ad wasn't mentioned, officially. But here is the most damning data point of all. A survey found that 77% of viewers felt hopeful after watching the ad, which sounds like a win, until you see the next number. Only 34% said it made them want to purchase Gillette products. The campaign moved people emotionally. It just didn't move them to a store. Gillette had made a very beautiful, very expensive piece of content that inspired people to feel good about humanity and then go buy someone else's razor. There was also the small matter of audience targeting. The campaign reached an audience that was 51% female. People who might genuinely appreciate the message, but who were not in the market for men's razors. Gillette had successfully reached the right people for entirely the wrong reasons. And a study of over 4,500 actual Gillette buyers found that most of them were traditional men who valued family and national pride. Gender equality was not their primary concern. The campaign had planted its flag directly opposite its own customer base. Gillette had chosen a side in a culture war, and the side it chose was not the side that bought its razors. By August 2019, Gillette quietly pivoted. The company shifted its spotlight to local heroes, firefighters, personal trainers, community figures. The toxic masculinity experiment was shelved. They just never held a press conference to admit why. So what actually went wrong? Not one thing, 3 things. In sequence, each one compounding the damage from the last. First mistake, they targeted the wrong audience. The campaign was designed to impress people who would praise it, not people who would purchase because of it. You can have 100 million people watch your ad, and if none of them intend to buy your product afterward, what you have is a very expensive short film. Applause doesn't pay dividends. Second mistake, they confused product relevance with cultural relevance. This is the one most people miss. Nike's Kaepernick campaign worked because Nike sneakers are public objects. You wear them on the street. They communicate something about your identity to every stranger who glances at your feet. A Nike shoe is a statement before it's a shoe. A Gillette razor is used at 6 a.m. in your bathroom, alone, in front of a mirror. Nobody is watching. It does not communicate your values to anyone. It removes facial hair. When a brand attached to a private utilitarian product tries to make a grand statement about your moral character, the response isn't inspiration. The response is, "Why are you talking to me about this while I'm shaving?" Third mistake, and the most expensive, they told existing customers they were the problem, because men who felt accused didn't just leave the brand. They left loudly, they filmed it, they shared it, they recruited others to leave. Every razor in the trash was a piece of content. Every boycott video was a testimonial in reverse. Gillette had accidentally engineered a viral campaign for its own destruction. Impressive in a way, horrifying in every other way. In December 2023, 4 years after the ad, P&G announced another $1.3 billion write-down on Gillette. The total damage across 6 years, $9.3 billion. Not from a defective product, not from a manufacturing failure, from 1 minute and 48 seconds of video, and the 3 strategic miscalculations baked inside it. Was the division leader wrong to call it a price worth paying? That's genuinely complicated. Younger consumers do reward brands that take positions. The demographic math of who buys razors will shift over the next 20 years. As a bet on 2040, the underlying logic wasn't completely insane, but it was catastrophically wrong for 2019. He assumed existing customers would tolerate being called part of the problem. They didn't. He assumed awareness would convert to purchase intent. It didn't. He assumed the brand had enough accumulated goodwill to survive a direct challenge to its customer's identity. It didn't. 3 wrong assumptions, $9.3 billion. The lesson isn't that brands should stay silent. It isn't that social responsibility is always bad strategy. The lesson is simpler than that, and harder. Know which category your product lives in. Is it a statement? Something people display publicly as a signal of who they are? Or is it a solution? Something people use privately at 6 a.m. to solve a problem? Those two categories require completely different strategies. Confusing them is the kind of mistake that looks brilliant in a boardroom and gets discussed in business schools for the next 30 years. You can lecture your customers. You can take a public moral stand. You can generate millions of views and a globally trending hashtag and a week of think pieces praising your courage. But at the end of the day, someone still has to buy the razor. And that person gets to decide what a price worth paying actually means.